Hello everyone and welcome to the Commexis Cast, all the news you need to know from our inbox to yours. Today we're asking the question, how could your website's load speed be hurting your business? Hello everyone, I'm Matthew McGrorty, the videographer and podcaster here at Commexis, and today I am joined by the lead strategist at Commexis, Phillip.
Good morning.
So today we're asking the question, how could your website's loading speed be affecting your business? A lot of this comes from a DigiDay piece by Chris LaRusso, who is the SVP Publisher Solutions at Nativo.
That's a heck of a title.
That is a very long title. So they were discussing in this piece, which you will find linked in our blog post, a 2017 study from Akamai, and they found that a 100 millisecond delay in website load time led to a 7% drop in conversion rates. Meanwhile, only 9.6% of users bounce when encountering an average page load time of 2 seconds, and bounce rates skyrocket to 32.3% when page load times climb to 7 seconds. So we've all experienced this. We go on our phone and we go on a website and it takes 4-5 seconds to load, and you think to yourself, this sucks.
I have more important things to do with my time.
Precisely. Of course, this also does happen on desktop sometimes, and I find that particularly annoying, actually.
I think it's even more so.
In particular.
Yeah.
So we've all encountered slow load times. But the stats that Akamai and their study have shown is that, you know, even the smallest amount, 100 milliseconds, can cause a 7% drop. So we always, one of the stats we've talked about before on the show, and that gets thrown around a lot, is that you typically only have about 6 to 7 seconds to sort of capture somebody's attention. That's on your website, that's on things like ads, all that good stuff. And when you're having a 100 millisecond difference of, like, that's incredible to me.
Well, I think it's kind of a chicken or the egg situation, because the mobile standards are now carried throughout the website process, and how sites are ranked through Google. You know, that page load speed time is really, really important.
Yeah. So
if you're seeing that kind of load time, you know, and it's part of the user experience, which is what we know Google really emphasizes. You know, it's a wonder. I'm wondering how far ahead of this that study was done, because obviously Google already knew it was an issue, and that's why they made it a ranking factor to begin with. What I'm kind of curious about is what they talked about in conversions as opposed to bounce rates, because those are two very different things. Because once somebody gets into your site, the conversion theoretically would have to involve multiple steps within the site. So they're getting further down that funnel, whereas a bounce rate is just they get to that homepage and they bounce right off. So those are two very different kind of user pathways. So I'm curious what, you know, to say that conversion is an issue, that would mean that somebody's already gotten on the site and then started the sales process or the process of purchasing something. So, you know, that I would like to see a little more of the data on how they delineate between those two things.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because, you know, as you mentioned, when we talk about conversions, there's a lot of variables. Whereas when we talk about bounce rates, it's normally all website focused and centered, and revolving around either loading or the content on the site.
Right, and bounce rate also factors. Is it an organic bounce rate, or is it, or is, how are people arriving on that page? Because it could very well just be a simple factor of they're getting on that page and they're not seeing what they want, or it doesn't look like what they're asking for, and they're leaving. So, you know, if that's compounded by the page load speed time, but it's also an important factor from bounce rate in general. You know, it's a content-driven, usually, metric. So
that's a great point. And one of the things that Nativo brings up a little bit later in their piece is about third-party tags and how that can kind of slow down your website a little bit if you have too many of them. So they mentioned that an informal accounting by Nativo shows that the typical open website has anywhere between 40 and 80 third-party tags running on it. And this third-party tag code is notorious for slowing pages to the point where users lose patience and bounce. So can you talk just a little bit, Phil, because you're more experienced in regards to third-party tags?
I mean, there's a lot of different, to say that all third-party tags are one thing or another, it's kind of a strange, but the majority of you're seeing third-party tags are either for gathering analytics for a page, or they're there to follow user behavior once they get on that page. You know, there's a lot of different functions for a third-party tag, so there's a lot of different things that they can do. do. So it's not necessarily an implication that what they're doing is necessarily harmful. It's more just a matter of how many of them you're actually running and how efficient the ones that you have are. So you need to really go back and do a pretty thorough accounting of what you have on the page and make sure that A, you're actually using that information, B, that with the GDPR stuff coming forward, is this something that is this information that you're gathering legally on a client or a potential client, and 3, do you actually need these, all of them? I mean, some of them are, a lot of times people put them up and then forget they're there. There may very well be a service that you're not even using anymore that's listed there as a third-party tag. So just, I would definitely recommend on a regular basis going through and just cleaning that stuff out and making sure that you're using all of that stuff the way it's supposed to be used, and that it's not, a drag down on the site. And honestly, a lot of times you'll see that that these things have overlapping functionality. So, it may simply just be a situation where you're like, hey, I'm using these two things, they do the same thing, let's figure out which one is more efficient or which one we're still paying for.
So I have a question for you, and this I don't know if you'll necessarily be able to answer this, or if there is a concrete sort of answer. Is 40 to 80 page tags, third-party tags, a lot?
That is a lot, yeah. And from an average, and I said a lot of times I think that just comes with, a lot of sites are Frankenstein designs where multiple people are involved in that process over years and years and years, and they put these tags on the site and then they forget they're there, and somebody else comes in and puts another tag on that does the same thing but uses a different function. Or another situation that we see frequently is people using multiple different agencies over the course of their their marketing lifetime. So a lot of times these agencies come in and they do their own thing, and they don't do a full accounting of what's already existent on the site, and that can continue to affect your load speed, because they're just building on what's there instead of saying, hey, this stuff's already existent, maybe we can plug into what's already there. A lot of times other agencies won't give you the logins for things like that, or for example, the biggest one we see is Google Analytics, because it's tied to a specific Gmail account, and a lot of times agencies will create those and they don't necessarily think to pass that stuff on, or the client doesn't think to get that information before they terminate the relationship with the former agency. So, I think that is an excessive number, and I think it's scary that is an average. But I also think that if you do a frequent, it doesn't have to be even once a year, just kind of like a spring cleaning sort of thing. Just go through and have your developers take a look and make sure that all the tags that you have there are active, because a lot of times that can slow that down too. They're pinging a site that's no longer there, or they're checking for an answer that doesn't come back because that tool's no longer used, or the login's no longer valid, that kind of stuff. But just make sure that they're checking that stuff on a regular basis, because again, there's no way that if that's an average, then you're talking some sites have 80. There's no way all of those are active and in use.
So just double check, make sure you're all good in that scenario. Nativo mentions also just a couple things about ways that have been created for faster loading, and I'll just mention them briefly because we've talked a lot about them in the past. These are not really new things. So one of the things is Google AMP, so Google Accelerated Mobile Pages, which are kind of slimmed down, designed pages that are meant to load a lot faster.
Those are very specific purpose. They're not. You're not going to use an AMP on your home page.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So. And one of the things they actually mentioned, which is really funny, is that sometimes the page loads so fast that the advertisements still load fast enough. So there you go. And then also they mentioned Facebook Instant Articles, which have a whole bunch of their own issues, but basically publishers are able to have pages load a lot faster when you're on Facebook. So just two things to sort of keep in mind. We've talked a lot about them in the past, so you guys can check out our past history of discussing them. We've probably talked about them too many times for me to even list out completely.
They're important though, because I think that they're underutilized in my opinion, and I think not enough people know about them. So I think if we can drive more adoption of those things, I think that's a positive development in either way. So
absolutely. So finally, if you're interested in how fast your website is loading, go to Google PageSpeed Insights. I'll link it in the blog description, or you can search Google PageSpeed Insights. It's really quick, easy. You're going to be sitting there for a minute while it analyzes your site, and then you'll get a nice little score, nice little report, and stuff like that. So just something to keep in mind. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Commexis Cast. Thank you, Phillip, for joining me adjacent to the table today. If you guys want to listen to more of us, you can check us out on TuneIn, Stitcher, the Apple Podcast Store, Store, the Apple iPad Store.
Well, they do sell iPads as well.
That is true. Yeah. The Apple Podcast Store, SoundCloud, and the Google Play Music Store, as well as the Google Podcasts app. And if you would like to watch us, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and on IGTV. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time.